It says I'm going live. Okay, so it says I'm live. Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. I hope you can. This is another take of going live streaming with you guys. And yes, I am kind of new at this, so bear with me, okay? So it is Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2018. And I've been putting off wanting to read stories online. So the stories I'm about to read to you are from tons of books that I've collected over the years since I was little. A lot of them, oh, here's the camera lane, I should look there. A lot of them I have passed down to my own sons. I have a 27-year-old, yes, I do, and a 13-year-old. But these are well-cherished books. I try to keep them intact. My youngest one, when he was in 5th grade, had to read over 100 books, I think, for 5th grade. And he read more than that and came out with straight A's at the end of the year. Yay! But these are a few of the treasured books that I like. This one is Once Upon a Christmas by stories by James Dillet Freeman. You can take a look at that. Okay. In the back side here, it tells you the other stories and things, information. So I'm going to read a story from this, The Tale of a Pig. He has a long preface in here. It's several pages, so I will most likely come back and do that part as well. But this is my first time. I'm kind of nervous to be reading to you guys live. Once I figure out how to do the, I guess, filming myself and then posting it, because I haven't gotten to the editing part yet. But I believe my son, I have to remember, look at the camera, the red light, that my youngest son, Jacob, will help me out with that, hopefully. Yes, he's really good at it. And then the other book that I bought for my eldest son first, Dominic, is The Magic Well. It's a really cool book. But the first book that I ever read to my babies, before they were born, while they're still in my tummy, and then after they were born as babies, was Blue Moose by Manus Pinkwater. Blue Moose. And then, of course, Judy Blume and all the, Hardy Boys and all of that. So I have a large repertoire of books, and I mean a lot of books. I love to read. I love stories, and I also write my own little short stories, which haven't been published yet. No, I take that back. I did a small poem for a who's who in poetry or something like that, and I believe they published it. I didn't get my copy. But yeah, I have a poem out there. Yay. Oh, did I say my name? I'm sorry. No, hi, Pearl Johnson. This is on the thumb thing. Okay, I'll figure it out. But here we go. The Tale of a Pig. Again by James Dillet Freeman. Okay. So if I can be able to bear with me, because I like to show pictures as well. Here we go, kids. And disclaimer, a lot of the stories I will be reading, a lot of them are Christian-based. But if you're not Christian, just take it as a story to be read. I hope no one gets offended. Please do not get offended and say, oh my God, don't do that. I'm reading on my channel. If you don't want to hear about it or you don't like stories that deal with God, Jesus, Christianity or anything else like that, or Muhammad or anything, I have a ton of books. So then you don't have to watch or listen. That's just your choice, because we are in a free world with free choice. But I'm reading this because they're lovely stories. And it's about being a human, a good human person with good values. That's the bottom line, right? That's all we want. Okay? Spread the love and cheer. And also, don't spread hate. That's why the world's kind of jacked up as it is now. Unfortunately, my children have to live through it. I have to live through it, but not so much. But now it's like real. So that's why I want to do this. And I'm rambling, and I'm going to move on. Okay? Great. Okay. Oh, and if you hear an accent, yeah, I can't get rid of it. So whatever accent you hear, it's going to be there. And yes, I'm from Jersey girl, but I don't always have that Jersey accent when I read. Sometimes, let's just say my genealogy, Might come out somewhere. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Me, me, me. Okay. When the baby was born in the stable, what a commotion broke out in the yard. All the animals who lived there were in a flutter and a fuss. It was not every night that a baby was born in their stable, and certainly not such a baby as this. The little pig who belonged to the innkeeper's neighbor was just as excited as any of the animals that belonged to the innkeeper. He lived in the field on the other side of the fence, but he spent so much in the stable yard that he almost had to be counted as one who lived there. The fence was very old and he was very young, and to the young, a fence is not so much a barrier as a challenge. Tonight, the fence hardly seemed to be there. The little pig kept wriggling through it and and under it and around it, and asking the other animals, "What's happening now? What's happening now?" He could see for himself what was happening, but he asked not because he wanted to find out, but because he wanted to talk about it. Haven't you ever wanted to talk about it? That this was a very wonderful happening there could be no doubt. Not only the animals knew it, the innkeeper and his wife kept bustling back and forth all night long, and when they were not coming or going, they were sending the servants. One of them shouting at another, and all of them shouting at the stable boy posted at the stable door, who became so flustered that he bayed at the hens and clucked at the sheep and shooed the animals in and then shooed them out again. Whew. For one thing, there was a star. It had come sailing out of the east. It had come sailing out of the east till it reached the stable. There it stopped and stood and shone right down on the roof. "I tell you," said the turtle, whom all the animals respected as the oldest creature in the neighborhood. "Not even when Julius Caesar was born and there were some capital goings on in the sky that night, was there anything like this. The star was so bright the cock flew up to the top of the stable and would have started to crow, thinking it was dawn, had not the owl who lived in the hayloft flown by and hooted at him that he was making a fool of himself. The goat, who thought of himself as a scholar because he devoured every book he came upon, had an explanation. Tugging at his beard, he told the pig, "An extraordinary phenomenon, to be sure, but perfectly natural to us scientists. A conjunction of planets, we call it." But there was not only the star, there was also the angels. Not even the goat was learned even enough to explain away the angels. And it was what they were saying that stirred up most of the excitement. For they were saying that the baby who had just been born in the stable and was lying in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes, was Savior and Lord, and was to be King of Israel. The angels flew in and out of the stable, and they sang as they flew. Can you picture that? The little pig felt afraid, and when he first saw the angels, but after a while, as their huge wings billowed above over him, softly rising and falling. Can you imagine that? He found himself feeling much as he remembered having felt before he was weaned, when he had nestled under the great warm body of his mother. Later, when he had the other animals, later when he and the other animals were talking about the night and trying to recall the angels' voices, they asked the barnyard fowl, since they were singers of a sort, what the singing had been like. But as they try and as they would, The barnyard fowl could not describe it. Finally, a little barn swallow said that once on a journey he had alighted, a weary from his long day's flight, by the edge of a wood where wild plum trees were blooming at twilight. And there, while he rested and thrush began to sing, it was like a hush within a hush, he said. The angel's song was like that, only more so. It was like a hush within a hush. One of the strange things about the star and the angel's song was that the travelers staying at the inn slept soundly in their warm beds and rose the next morning and continued on their journey, unaware that anything at all had happened. But shepherds, keeping sheep in distant fields, saw the star and heard the singing and made the long trip through the dark hills to the stable. As the little pig later told the cat, there are those who have eyes and see, and there is the rest of the world. There was no doubt in which group he belonged, or for that matter, any of the animals. Human beings, being reasoning creatures, sometimes pass by wonders because their minds refuse to accept what they have come to believe runs contrary to their reason. Animals, on the other hand, hardly ever think about whether things seem reasonable or not. To them, everything is a wonder. So they are attuned to wonders. The moment the animals found out that the baby had been born, they all wanted to have a look at him. But they could see what with so many animals and inn people and shepherds coming down from the hills, it would never do for all of them to crowd in at once. This was not just a baby. This was a king. So they decided to go into one at a time. All agreed that the ox should be first, for it was in the manger that the little king was lying. When he came out, all the animals were waiting. "What is he like?" they cried. "I have never seen any brand new babies before, and certainly none who is to be a king. But he is a baby boy," said the ox slowly. "I imagine he looks much like he ought to. He looks strong and well. Strong and well. There's only one thing." "What is that?" asked the others. "I thought he looked sad," said the ox. "It is perfectly natural for a baby to look that way right after it is born," said the cow, who had been a mother many times and was considered to be an authority on the subject. "It will soon pass." The animals were relieved to hear the cow say this, and in they came, one after another, to see for themselves what the baby king looked like. The cows came, the sheep came, the goats came, the donkey came. In came all the barnyard fowl, the chickens, the ducks, the geese, and the guinea fowl. And of course, the dog and the cat came. They came and went as they wished. Can you imagine that? The turtle who lived in the pond came. The mouse who had a hole in the hayloft crept out and onto a beam and peered down. And the birds who lived in the ceiling rafters. 6 pigeons, 2 swallows, 3 bats. They thought of themselves as birds, the bats. 8 sparrows and an owl flew down to catch a view. But there was such a crowd of angels that the birds had to dodge between the big wings, like that. Can you imagine that? The bird's wings being so huge. Excuse me, the angel's wings being so large and beautiful. A few things came stealing out of the wild. A deer, a wolf, a rabbit, and a fox crept silent and unseen into the stable yard. They were too shy to go into the stable, but when the stable door flew open, whoosh, the wolf leaped and cried, "I saw him! I saw him!" The other three all declared that they had seen him too, and each tried to say what he looked like. He was lovely. He has lovely long ears, said the rabbit. He has sharp teeth, said the wolf. He has soft brown eyes, said the deer. What I like about him, said the fox, is that he looks so much like me. It wouldn't surprise me at all if when he grows up he has red hair. Red hair is a mark of intelligence, you know. The wolf mumbled under his breath that red hair, in the fox's case, at least, was a mark of an egotist. But he said nothing aloud. For some unaccountable reason, he found himself feeling uncommonly friendly just then, even toward the fox. There is an old legend, said the fox, that when the baby comes at last into his kingdom, the lion will lie down with the lamb. An old wives' tale it sounds like to me. I don't see much likelihood of that coming to pass, do you? Said the wolf, smiling at the deer and rubbing his shoulder against him affectionately. Right. And this is one of the strangest events that strange night. As the deer and the wolf and the fox and the rabbit walked away, they walked side by side. All the animals, as they came in quietly, most of them tiptoed. They smiled at the mother, who was very young, and she smiled shyly back at them. They smiled at the baby, who was younger still, but he did not smile. It was at the ox had said, it was as the ox had said, the baby looked sad. And it troubled the animals to see the baby who was to be a king looking so sad. But in they came to bless him and be blessed. And they all came, all that is except one. There was one who did not get in. This was the little pig. It was natural enough, I suppose, when you think about it, looking back. After all, the land where all this was happening was Judea, and everyone knows that the baby's people, well, they just have never felt close to pigs. But the little pig did not know this. When he heard that the baby was to be a king, had been born, he was so happy he danced. His heart danced, his eyes danced, his ears danced, his tail danced. He danced deep down inside himself, and he kicked up his heels and danced a happy jig. He rushed to get in line. He stood impatiently but politely until it was his turn to go inside. At last he reached the stable door. But inside the door stood the stable boy. Beside the stable boy stood the innkeeper. Beside the innkeeper stood the innkeeper's wife. When the innkeeper's wife saw the pig, she shrieked. When the innkeeper heard his wife shriek, he called. When the stable boy heard the master call, he picked up a long stick and ran toward the pig. "Ho there! Ho there!" shouted the boy. "Get out of here, you pig!" and he gave him such a whack on with the long stick that the little pig squealed with fright and scampered back across the stable yard and into the field where he lived. There he lay, peeping through the fence and watching people and angels and animals come into the stable. Once he tried to slip back. This time, when the stable boy saw him, he set the dog on him. The dog ran after him, barking ferociously. The little pig ran as fast as he could, for he was terrified by the dog. Ran even faster as he squirmed through the fence. He felt the dog's sharp teeth scrape his heels. See, that you stay there, said the dog sternly. You ought to know pigs aren't welcome here. Don't feel too bad. They won't let the skunk in either. This did not make the pig feel any better. However, he did not think it was necessary for the dog to mention him in the same breath with the skunk. When the dog had gone, the little pig lay there. He had never felt so alone in all his life. He would have cried if he had known how, but his eyes had never learned to form tears. So he cried and sighed, where no one else could hear, and no one else could know how much he hurt. It was not that he was altogether surprised. His mother had tried to get him to stay out of the stable yard. You're not wanted over there, she told him. You live in a part of the world where a lot of people have a prejudice against us pigs. Why? Asked the little pig. No reason, his mother had said. You don't need a reason when you have a prejudice. But the little pig had not really listened. His ears had heard her, but not his heart. No matter how much someone else tried to make it plain, you never understand what something like this means until it actually happens to you. Oh, several times he had caught his hints and whispers. Once the cat had told him, you know, you're not a bad fellow for a pig. And another time, as he came bouncing up, he thought he had heard the goat say to one of the ducks, some of my best friends have been pigs. But they do have a certain smell, don't they? But he had preferred to believe that he had not heard correctly. The little pig had always looked pretty good to himself. At one end, he had a long, pointed pink nose, this way, and he could wiggle. And at the other end, he had a pink corkscrew tail that could wiggle, too. And in between, he had sharp blue eyes that twinkled and danced, and sharp pink ears that sometimes stood up and sometimes flopped over, and a pink little roly-poly barrel of a body that squirted over the ground on 4 short, sturdy legs. All right, that was so funny. I got to repeat that. Can I go back a little bit? It's so cute. In between, he had sharp blue eyes that twinkled and danced, and sharp pink ears that sometimes stood up and sometimes flopped over, and a pink little roly-poly barrel of a body that squirted over the ground on 4 short, sturdy legs. Squirted. Compared to a duck or a camel, especially a camel, he thought he looked handsome. Get a little pointy tail, get the pointy ears, they flop over. He came from a fine old family. He had thrilled when his mother told him the story of his great uncles. He liked her to tell it over and over. They were very famous, those 3 little pigs who had built their houses of straw and wood and brick and outbraved, outwitted, and outlasted the big bad wolf in their world renowned contest of bravery and brain power. Sidebar, excuse me if I make a little mistake, but it's really good here. Okay. Okay, back to the story. They have been heroes as long as children have had heroes, his mother had told him, excuse me. His mother had told him, too, about another famous great uncle, the fierce wild boar, who at the end of a mighty hunt had turned and killed Adonis, the handsome young huntsman who was the lover of the goddess Venus. Ooh, the boar did that? We need to pick up on that story too. This act had made the goddess so angry that she had almost brought an end to life on earth. Tonight, as the little pig lay alone in the field and nursed his anguish, he wished he were like his uncle. All of us pigs should grow up and to be like him, he thought. Then they'd wish they had treated us differently. And he felt inside his mouth with his tongue to see if perhaps his tusk had begun to grow. What a night! One moment he felt angry, the next moment he felt afraid, the next moment he felt crushed, the next moment he felt abandoned, the next moment he felt worthless. Every moment he felt miserable. It was the longest and saddest night of his short and merry life. This night will never end, he said. But at last the sun came up. The star faded, and the angels flew away. The cock flew up to the top of the roof and crowed, and the usual day that follows every other day began. What a gabbling, honking, quacking, cooing, squawking, squeaking, chirping, lowing, braying, baying, mewing, barking filled the stable yard. The king of Israel was asleep and in the stable, though it is a wonder he got any sleep. All that noise, huh? But whenever anyone peeped into the stable to see how things were, he came back to report that the baby was sleeping soundly as a baby ought to do. But also, of this there was no longer any questions. The baby looked sad. Let me read that again. But also, of this there was no longer any question. The baby looked sad. All that day the animals kept watch, each one hoping to be the first to catch the baby smiling. But he did not smile. He looked at everything with his eyes, which were very kind. The cow, who had very kind eyes, herself said that the baby's eyes were kind. But there was a sad. But they were as sad as they were kind. The animals had different ideas as to why he looked so sad. As you all know, said the ox, I groan and sweat under heavy burdens that are piled on my back, until sometimes I think my back will break. When I looked at the baby, I thought I heard him say, cast your burden on me, all you who are heavy laden. And I felt ashamed, but I could not help myself. I cast my burden on that little baby. And somehow I knew that all the burden bearers of this world were casting their burden on him. Then I knew why he looked so sad. The old gander who lived in the pond told them, once I was a young wanderer. I was hurt and left behind when the other geese flew south. The autumn rains fell across the dismal northland marshes. After the rain came the snow. When I looked into the baby's eyes, I remembered what it was like flying at night through falling snow, when there was no moon or star in the empty winter sky, and I had to find my way home alone. Then I knew why he looked so sad. The dog had his own thoughts. Most of you don't know what it is to love, he said. We dogs are known from the depth of our affection. We don't love many, but we love one or two, and we love them fiercely, devotedly. We lay down our life for them, willingly. When the baby looked at me, I felt how he loves everything more than I love anything. Excuse me. I could not myself feel much such love, but I could sense that what it must be like. Oh, what it must be like to have to love everything. Then I knew why he looked so sad. Excuse me. All of you are right, said the donkey. But when the baby looked at me, I felt he was not only looking at me, but through me and beyond me. And he saw something I could not see. He saw the suffering of things, he said, and he saw the loneliness of things. He saw how much things need love. Excuse me. But he saw yet more than all this. I do not know what he saw, but I know that if we saw it, we too would look sad. This is a really good story. Then the animals began to consider what could be done to make the baby smile. Almost everyone had an idea. The cat said she knew an old woman who lived in a cave under a hill who had a magic remedy for almost anything. She stewed the hair. Wait, what? She stewed the hair from the beard of a billy goat and the tail of a dog and the juice of strange and secret herbs gathered in the dark of the moon. Sweet. The other said no to this at once. I would too. She stewed the hair from the beard of a billy goat and the tail of a dog and the juice of. Okay, sorry, that's wow. A sparrow said that he had overheard an angel telling of a potion that was used on cherubs who were out of sorts. In this potion, the twinkle of a star was poured into the shimmer of a rainbow. Oh, this sounds pretty. And a pink cloud was melted into the sound that lingers in the mind when the song is ended. Then a new thought was allowed to bubble up through the sweetness of an old memory till it frothed. All these were stirred together with the sunlight and skimmed off before the sun rises and the moonlight sifted through the mist. This mixture was said to lift the spirits of any spirit. But the animals decided the ingredients would be too hard to obtain. It was the white hen who came up with the idea the animals liked best. This is a king, she said, and he needs to be treated like a king. No one has given him any kingly gifts. Naturally, he misses these. Let us give him some kingly gifts. Do we have any? Asked the guinea fowl. I don't know whether we do, but I certainly do. What? I don't know whether we do, but I certainly do, said the white hen, looking at the guinea fowl with contempt. I will lay him a clutch of my very best eggs, smooth as porcelain, white as alabaster. They will be like no eggs ever seen before, for whoever eats them will never be hungry again. He will have only to think of them, and he will feel fed. Immediately, all the other animals began to think about the kingly gifts they had to give. I, said the cow, will give him my milk. Purer than water, better than wine. I will eat only the sweetest hay and freshest clover, and I will chew a sprig of mignonette to give it flavor. It will be like no drink ever drunk before, for when anyone drinks it, he will quench not only his body's thirst, but the thirst of his mind, and he will always feel content. I will give him a song, said the pigeon. It will be a lullaby. Time out for a picture. There's a camel. Camels right there. See that? There's an elephant and camel and a horse and a king riding there. Oh. Okay, sorry. Go back to the little pigeon. I will give him a song, said the pigeon. It will be a lullaby, lighter than a summer wind, softer than his mother's breath, and it will have his power. This power, whoever hears it, however troubled of spirit he may be, will instantly fall asleep. All the other animals had kingly gifts to give too. The sheep gave her wool to make a blanket that would not only wrap the baby away from the cold air, but from all the world's cares. The donkey gave his back. Whoever mounts on my back, said the donkey, will be excuse me, will be born not only to unknown places, but to unknowable thoughts. The dog gave his fierce courage. The swallow gave her power to fly above all earthly trouble. The turtle gave his slow patience. The turtle gave his slow patience. The ox gave his brute strength. Even the mouse gave a gift, his power to find a hiding place where there was none. For the day may come, said the mouse, when he has nowhere to lay his head. The little pig, of course, gave nothing. The dog would not let him through the fence. Once he said to the dog, if only you would let me see him, perhaps I could make him happy. At this, the dog snorted loudly. If you ask me, it's thinking about pigs and what a problem they are that makes him so sad. The little pig said no more to the dog, but he tried to imagine what gift he might give. He wanted so much to make the little king happy. He might be like a nightingale, he thought, and sing melodiously. Yeah, he might be like a nightingale, he thought, and sing melodious songs that would please the little king. But when he opened his mouth to try, the grunts and snorts that issued forth convinced him that this was not the gift he had to give. Then he thought he might be like a bear and put on a fierce show by wrestling with a dog. The mere thought of wrestling with a dog delighted him so much that he felt sure it would make the little king shout aloud with joy. But just then the dog trotted up and barked at him, and he knew he would never have the courage to do that. Then he decided he might be like a porpoise and dive into the pond into the stable yard, balancing a ball on his nose and leaping through the ring of fire. That would thrill anyone. But when he looked at the pond, he realized that he could not swim and in fact did not even like water. He doesn't like water. I'm just an ordinary little pig, he said sadly to himself. Try as he would, he could think of no great and kingly gift he had to give. Sad. But as he sat there thinking his hardest, his thoughts were interrupted. The swallow came swooping out of the sky, turning somersault in the air. Great news! Great news! She cried for everyone to hear. My cousin flown down from the court of Herod the king. 3 kings out of the east have been there, looking for the babe. They have seen the star and followed it, and tonight they will be here to worship him, bearing many costly gifts. When they heard this, all the animals rejoiced. They were sure that 3 kings out of the east would know what to do to make the baby who was to be a king happy. It was long after dark when the 3 kings came. The little pig gazed at them in awe, and so did all the other animals. They were beyond a doubt the most important looking personages that had ever appeared in the stable yard. The first king was pale of skin, ruddy cheeked and beardless. He had blue eyes, the blue of steel rather than of the sky. A long golden hair that waved like wheat around his shoulders. He bore a sword, the color of his eyes. He wore a golden crown spiked with sapphires and diamonds. Over his suit of flashing golden mail, his ermine robe fell like wind-blown snow. He rode a white stallion. Fire flashed from its hooves when it pranced, and stars sparkled in its mane when it tossed its head. Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. You imagine that? The second king had skin the color of gold leaf that has aged through many kinds of weather. His slanted eyes were green. A long, thin black mustache curled down over his lips. His straight black hair fitted his head like a helmet. He brandished a green old axe. His crown was green gold too, cleft like a bishop's and surmounted by a figure cut from an emerald. His suit was many colored, all of silk embroidered with fantastic figures, and over it hung a cape of damask purple. Ooh. He rode a red-brown camel, tall and double-humped. When the camel breathed, blue smoke curled from his nostrils. Black of skin was the third king. His eyes were black, deep as still pools of night and dark as dreamless slumber, but they flashed like onyx when the light fell on them. His hair was black, like cropped wool twisted tight against his skull. His beard was black, combed stiff. It thrust forth from his chin. Ooh. He carried a black spear tipped with a silver of obsidian. His crown was a plain gold circlet. He wore no undergarment. Excuse me? Oh, sorry. He wore no undergarment save a black breechcloth. Over it, folded loosely around him, hung a coarse cotton robe like a monk's. It was red, a dark, deep crimson red. He was mounted on a huge elephant, almost as black as himself. When the elephant set down his foot, the earth shook. The 3 kings dismounted and went at once into the table. The animals who had been gazing at them wide-mouthed and eyes agape, as if they had been stricken by a spell, gave a gasp of admiration and poured into the stable behind them. Birds, beasts, barnyard fowl, they had no thought to save for the kings. The 3 claimed every eye. So it was that the little pig was left unguarded and needed only a moment. In less time than that, he had wriggled under the fence, shot across the yard, slipped into the stable, and was hiding under a pile of hay in the farthest corner. There he watched, The three kings marched forward until they came where the young child lay, alone with his mother. For a moment they gazed at him in silence. Then the first king fell on his knee. I am Caspar, said the king, and his voice was like a golden trumpet. O king most mighty, I have come to bring you my gift. He opened the lid of the golden casket he carried, and stretching out his hands, set it before the child. It was crammed with golden coins. The gold shone, it was crammed with golden coins. The gold shone with a rich, soft light that reflected from everything, until the whole place shone as if it were a king's court. The second king, falling on his knee, said, I am Melchior, and his voice twinkled like a sharp harp. Here, O King of righteousness, is the gift I have brought. He set before the child a casket made of jade, with walls so thin it looked as if it had been spun out of a green light. When he opened the lid, green tears of frankincense spilled forth and fell upon the ground, and the stable was filled with the fragrance of holiness as if it were a splendid temple. I am Balthazar, said the third king, and his voice was soft as the voice in a dream, soft as a hum of bees on a petaled afternoon. This, Lord, is my gift. Falling on his knees, he sat down before the child, his casket, which was carved from one gigantic blood-red ruby. When he opened the lid, the animal saw that it was filled with myrrh. The pieces of myrrh, red and dark, looked like drops of dried blood. Their strong scent filled the air like smoke, a magic smoke. For in it the stable disappeared, and for a moment each animal felt that he was standing alone on a bare hill. Afterwards, when they discussed the strange vision, most of the animals said they saw 3 trees on the hill. A few said they saw not trees but crosses. But the others convinced these that they must have seen myrrh trees and taken them for crosses, since the myrrh is a tree of thorns. For what would crosses have to do with a baby who was to be a king? The vision lasted only for a moment. Then they were in the stable again, and with the 3 kings kneeling beside their gifts. They were kingly gifts. The animals all agreed to that. Even the kingliest of kings would have found them worthy to be placed among his treasures. The baby looked at the gifts, his eyes flickering from gift to gift, almost as if he weighed each one. But his expression did not change. His eyes looked very kind, but they looked so sad. Slowly, the 3 kings rose to their feet and began to back out of the stable. When they rose and backed away, the animals rose and backed away too, like the little creatures that run up a sandy beach before a great wave. Pell-mell, they all rushed out into the stable yard. They ran out partly because they were impelled by fear and awe, but even more because they were drawn by curiosity. They all wanted to watch the kings ride away on their strange mounts. In 2 minutes, nobody was left in the stable but the child and the mother and the little pig. The little pig had not run out with the others because he was afraid of what they might do if they saw him, and also because he did not want to go. At last, he had gotten in to see the baby who was to be a king. The baby lay in the manger. Spread before him were the golden chest filled with golden coins, and the jade chest filled with tears of frankincense, and the ruby chest filled with pieces of myrrh. But the baby's eyes still looked so sad. The little pig looked at the rich gifts, and he felt sad too, for he knew that he had no such gifts to give. He was only a little pig, alone and frightened. But suddenly, the little pig found himself reaching out of his own helplessness and littleness and sadness into through the sadness of the baby. And he knew why the child had never smiled. For he saw that the baby could not be a king until the king had been a baby. I'm going to read that one more time. For he saw that the baby could not be a king until the king had been a baby. It has been all wrong, he cried. The star and all those angels and these kings out of the east and shepherds from the hills and the inns people and all us animals, oh, all of us friendly and with the best intentions, but what a ruckus and to-do we have made. It has been like a circus. The little pig was so carried away by all this that the force of his thoughts pushed him out of the hay where he was hiding. Yes, it's been all wrong, he cried again. These things are what it takes to make a king smile, but not a baby. Can't you see? He began to run toward the mother and the baby. Only this mother could make her baby smile, he cried, looking up at her. If only I could talk to her, he thought. He knew that animals like himself thought they can talk, well, enough to one another, can hardly ever talk to human beings, but he talked as best he could. Excuse me. I guess I need some water. But he talked as best as he could. I could tell you what would make your baby smile, he said to the mother. For I know what has made babies smile from the beginning of babies. My mother told me. He said this in the only way he knew how to say it, which was in a little pig's way. As he ran across the floor, his thoughts stirred him so that his little barrel of a body bounced and bobbed and jiggled and jogged like a butter in a churn. One ear went up, one ear went down. His little pink nose wiggled, his little pink tail wiggled, and he made little grunts and snorts that were not all like a nightingale's song, but formed a happy sound. And when the young mother saw this little pig running toward her, so pink and roly-poly, jiggling like a jollity, that she could not help laughing, she lifted up her son in her arms and she held him out toward the little pig. And she said in a voice so bubbling with laughter that it felt like butterflies, Look at the little piggy. Oh, what a funny little happy little fellow. As the young mother laughing held the baby out to look at him, the little pig saw the sadness starting to go out of the baby's eyes. Then he bounced and jiggled even more in his effort to say what he was saying. Suddenly, the mother drew her son against her breast and held him to her heart. For as she laughed at the pig, an old rhyme had come flushing into her mind. A rhyme she had not heard since she was a baby. Excuse me. She reached down and touched her son's foot and tickled each one of his toes in turn and she said, this little piggy went to the market. And this little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef to eat, and this little piggy had none. This little piggy went wee, wee, wee all the way home. As she spoke the last line, her fingers flashed over her son's form. clear to his mouth, tickling him all the way. And at that moment, some of the cold that circles the world melted, and some of the pain and loneliness that circle living beings melted too. For when her hand reached his mouth, the baby smiled. Yes, the baby who was to be a king smiled. He smiled a baby smile. That is a wonderful and mysterious event. The baby who was to be king smiled. Like spring's buds and morning's light, it is a fragrance blown to us from a small rose. And what garden the rose grew in, no one can remember. But we breathe it and we smile. For I know that his mother was smiling. A mother always smiles when she sees that her baby is smiling. And the little pig, who was the only other living creature there, unless perhaps a mouse had crept back into the stable to keep from being trampled by the crowd outside, I feel certain he smiled too. And some of the cold and pain and loneliness melted from around his heart. The last scene of him that night was his little corkscrew tail as it slipped back under the fence. But everyone who saw it agreed that it was wriggling as if it were a smile. I hope so, for he has made me smile for a moment. And I pray that you, whatever you may count yourself to be, animal or angel, or something in between, and wherever you may find yourself this Christmas, alone or in the company of us in the stable yard, I pray that you may be smiling too. The end. Thank you for taking the time out to watch my live stream if you are, and if you didn't get a chance to see it, hopefully you get to see it later. Again, this is Pearl Diane Johnson. Oh, I'm saying my whole name. My name is Pearl Diane, and I'm thankful to be able to read to you again Once Upon a Christmas stories by James Dillet Freeman. Again, I don't own the rights. I'm just reading his story, and I'm hoping to be able to share more stories with you. He has Angel with a Broken Wing. I may read that next time that I tune in with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for taking the time out to join me. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if I don't get to say hi to you then, okay? Blessings to you.